There's no doubt about it, there is a conflict between the location of the port and industrial development that's grown up around it and the particular marae by the bridge there. Clearly an adverse impact on that marae. You've got industrial discharges in the air, you know, they've had any number of complaints. And part of the divestment is that it can be sliced and diced in many ways, but to sell down 26% down to a minimum of 28%, you know, you're talking about $2 billion worth of assets and potential wealth in that. It's recognised that the mana whenua should have an interest in that, not an entitlement, but a right to pick up some of those shares and be part of it. And I think the port company would welcome positive involvement of mana whenua. But my understanding of the sort of discussions today, they felt that there's been a bit of misuse of the RMA system, almost blackmail and leverage, trying to get big payments, big capital payments up front and control through directorships of the port. And that is not welcomed, but the bigger picture of actually having mana whenua as part of the business is important, and I think the parties are trying to work towards that. So that's where that particular debate rests at the moment. But the bigger picture is to get that Stellar Passage operational. It's not an environmental issue, it's just being held up by processes and these discussions and tensions behind the scene, and it's just costing the country and the region too much. But it's not to say that mana whenua shouldn't have an interest and involvement in the port company and other businesses around the region, and they do, and that's welcome.
Thank you. Well, that's great to hear that they're going to be acknowledged and respected in regards to their own legal rights, in my view. Following on from that, I'm probably going to flick across to the local station in the container port here, bearing in mind again that the Regional Council is the majority shareholder of the Port of Tauranga. What, if any, involvement has the Regional Council had, if any, in terms of this port being, this container thingy being placed here? Bearing in mind, bread and butter, yeah, containers for the port, it's a real central part of their day-to-day. Has the Regional Council had any involvement at all for or against the placement of a container park here in Te Puna? It's something that I'd just like to know. I'm just curious. Thank you.
I'm sure there's others in the room who are in a position to answer that with the history of it, but the initial resource consent was not granted by the District Council or supported, as I understand, by the Regional Council. It was appealed and went to the Environment Court, and the Environment Court gave that approval. So that's really where that has been.
Hang on. I think you really need to back up.
I'm willing to have a...
Yeah. The back has to be backed up to 2002, and the Regional Council didn't have anything to do with it because it was turned down by the District Council. So the Regional Council went, great, we don't have to do anything, walk away. Then it went to the Environment Court, and the Environment Court did allow it to go through. In this decision for here, the District Council said, no, we recommend it does not happen. The Regional Council said, yes, we recommend it happen.
Thank you.
I wasn't aware of that. It was well before my time.
Thank you for clarifying that. And why I ask is because containers being such a big thing for Te Puna going forward.
Yep.
Why I ask is because the Regional Council clearly has an interest, in my view, because of the port and the need for containers. So I'm going to ask straight up, has the Regional Council had any dealings at all with the container group itself? Here's my question.
Other than involvement with the various resource consent that the Environment Court approved and any compliance, and I'm not saying we've done it well, but we have had involvement to that extent. But it comes back to the basic principle, is that the proper location for that function? And the initial community position was no. I think overwhelmingly the community is still saying no. So how do we find a solution? surmising here, but the initial attraction probably was the cheapness of what was seen as waste land. Okay? And all the adverse impact that's flowed from that. The Regional Council does have an interest in Rangiuru Industrial Park. That's tied in with freight and big business. Perhaps that would be a better location for it. So that's the sort of thing you've got to look at. I think you've got to find a solution that's acceptable to the community and makes things work. And because we do need containers, it's just a question of the appropriate siting of it.
Yes, and hearing all these bugs and diseases and things that come on boats and can't be helped because it's in the water, that to me sounds like it's going to transfer across to these containers which jump all over the country, all over the world, and they're going to land here in Te Puna,
you've got to be,
waterways and rivers.
You've got to be very careful how you handle them.
Yeah, just not have them here maybe.
Just to explain the thing, Ken was saying bilge water. What he's talking about is ballast water. So a ship comes here empty and it fills up with water in China, and it comes here and it dumps the water outside the harbour here into the ocean and comes in and fills up with logs and goes back to China. So the ballast water that comes from China or wherever, that's the stuff that brings the stuff into the area. It's not sandflies sitting on the outside of the ship.
Right, I'd like to put this to the three regional councillors and to Ken last. When we're rolling over a resource consent for our bores, 8 years ago we paid $375. Currently we're told to allow $30,000. Now you've already got all the information from when our bores went down originally, so everything is there, and I find that hard to come to terms with because we cannot even fill in the application ourselves. We're forced to employ consultants and all the rest of it. I'll put it to you, John, and then Neil, and then Ken. Can you see any reason, because I have asked this of the Chief Executive Officer of Regional Council, for goodness sake, just get out there a new form, something that we can read. We are the landowner. We should be able to fill it in. We've already got the original information. And I just can't see why it can't all be simplified. And I did ask that of the Chief Executive Officer, and I got nowhere.
I want to express my apologies. I've got a prior engagement. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
I don't know about the answers, but I do know a bit about the problem. I have 8 consents in total in my business, I can think the biggest one, the annual fee is $6,000 just for monitoring, not renewing of the consent. So I fully appreciate how the dollars add up. For our 2 dairy sheds, we employed a consultant like you talked about, and we were told we weren't allowed to take the water from the spring, and so we had to go through a big process and extend out to a river, spend a heap of money and get worse water. So the other one, we used a different consultant, and they got someone to write a report and said that the effects were less than minor and we were allowed to do it. So it's an absolute nonsense the way it works at the moment, in my view, and seriously needs addressing. And I think in a different matter, Ken was commenting about how much money or how much resources put into monitoring, but it just seems to be a churn going round and round with little outcome. And so I certainly concur with your thoughts that it's something that needs to be made much simpler.
Yeah, thank you. How do you feel, Neil?
I think you can probably guess my slant on it, and I'd say that's what happens when you let bureaucracies expand. Bureaucracies breed bureaucracy, and they love to produce procedures like that, which then works hand in hand with consultants because they've made it so complicated that no one can understand it, no only a consultant can unravel it. It's all a load of rubbish. It shouldn't be happening in the first place. What should be happening is what I was saying before, was that the default position should be you are allowed to do what you want to do, and the onus is on everybody else to prove where the harm is and why it can't be done. Not, oh, I don't think you should be doing that unless you can give us huge reports to show it's all right. The focus is around the wrong way. You should, especially if it's an existing situation.
Yeah.
If it's an existing situation, you know, if there was already a problem, we'd already know about it. So your bore, or whatever the consent relates to, is presumably not causing anyone any problem whatsoever. So how could you justify all of that palaver? To me, it's totally unjustifiable, and I would be left to my dictatorial world, I would sack a lot of planners because I don't think we need that many. And if we sack a lot of planners, then we'll be able to also get rid of the services of a lot of consultants, and your job will go a bit quicker and cheaper. That's what I think.
My views aren't too different, and that's why I'm strongly supportive of the RM reforms that are underway, because what we've developed is a self-perpetuating industry that's sort of driven by churn. And the signal from government is there'll be a whole lot more permitted activities, because the RMA has been weaponised. It's been weaponised by interest groups, and it's just got right out of hand. There's an awful lot. It was meant to be a fast track. This is back in 91 or 89 when the first bill was before Parliament. I actually chaired that select committee, to my horror. It was intended to be a simplification, a fast track, enabling. If it doesn't say you can't do it, you can do it. But it was captured by the planning profession, the consultants, and it is all self-perpetuating industry. You now get letters from the council if you put in a submission, oh, planners only like talking to planners.
Yeah.
So you've got to go and get a consultant planner. Now, I suspect the Planners Institute sort of thought of that one.
Yeah.
You know, this is just crazy, and we've made it so expensive, so cumbersome, it costs too much, it takes too long, the decks need to be cleared, it's got to be simplified, and talking about the area of the groundwater, all the scientific evidence that it's grossly under-allocated, there's no shortage, there's an abundance of groundwater between Waihi Beach and right through to Makatu. It's not under threat, and all this cost of monitoring, where's the data? What do they do with all this data? You know, what we do know is it's grossly under-allocated, there's a gross surplus of water.
Exactly. Amen to all of that.
We need to wind it up after that. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to have the alarm going off.
Thank you, Peter. We have a situation where a consent has been granted based on a cherry-picked sea level rise number. And this is a Station Road thing as well. The Regional Council says that 0.55 sea level rise to the year 2100 is the bar. The developers have been consented on a lower bar with an adaptive development model. So the idea is that if sea level rise is more than what they've developed for, they will then raise their platform out of the lowlands more. This is once they've already built workshops, built what they need to build. If you extrapolate that kind of theory across the country, and we are consenting on cherry-picked numbers that are below what Regional Council has issued, how do you deal with the consequences of that? And is that something that you would think is acceptable?
Well, I'll tell you what, I said I was young, but I ain't that young. I won't be thinking about it. The reality from my point of view, in 100 years' time, sea level estimations, and that's all they are. They're going to be an estimate. No one would have a clue, right?
No concrete number.
So logically, you would just build in a decent margin of error, wouldn't you?
You would hope so.
And that's the end of it, isn't it?
Yes, the question is really should not everybody be held to the same level? So if one neighbour has one number applied, should not the next neighbour have the same number applied?
Well, logically, yeah, because the sea level is going to be the same everywhere, isn't it?
You would think so.
You know.
But in
But
practice,
hey,
it
the
depends on
bureaucrats
how
will
much
have some
money
reason for why they didn't do it that way.
Yeah. Crazy stuff.
But further in relation, your original question was who would bear the responsibility? If they built at a lower level, they have to suffer the consequences. It should not be ratepayers or the rest of the community has to pick up the tab for them.
No, but that's not the sole problem that's been got at here. It's the mitigating things that have all been built based on that lower level. So let's say things accelerate and the water comes up, they're being told, oh yeah, you just add another 2 metres, but they do not have to change all their mitigating things 2 metres as well. So that's one of the problems. Is because of that, they now have the ability to actually exceed all their mitigating things and destroy all the amenity in the area. Now that, again, neighbour wants to build the same thing. He gets this height, they get this. He only has to build this amenity, this one has to spend this. Why is there the difference when they're side by side?
I totally agree, there should be no difference.
Yeah, Those sorts of things really annoy me. There's no justification for it whatsoever. It should be the common, same standard, because a private property owner can mitigate just as well as an industrial complex can. So the condition should be the same. But what we have to realise is that sea levels 5,000 years ago at the post-glacial maxima were actually about 6 metres higher than they are today. And if you go back 20,000 years at the peak of the last ice age, sea levels are actually 200 metres lower than they are today. So it's a very dynamic situation in geological terms.